Great.
Thank you to everybody who's here with us as we've been chatting and letting people join, and for anybody who's watching the recording, which is perfectly acceptable too. We are so excited to have you here today for financial literacy, what your family needs to know, and more importantly, maybe why they need to know it, especially on this topic. Oh, let's see if my slides want to advance. Oh, there we go. First they were slow and then they were fast. For anybody who is new to Cooper, I'm Marielle Benjamin. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. In my background, I've specialized in early childhood development for the last 17 years, and I'm the director of groups at Cooper. Those are the humans that I'm responsible for. And my husband, Matt, and Madeline, who is 11, and Lucas, who is 8. And not featured is Milo, my new puppy, who is my favorite baby, even though he's not human. But it turns out that all the things that you need to know for parenting also apply to dog training and make you like an excellent dog trainer. So it's phenomenal and wonderful, except his financial literacy, ladies, is probably pretty poor. I'm not sure. I don't know. He never spends his allowance. More about Cooper if you're new to us. We are your virtual parenting community, the village that most of us don't have, but all of us most definitely need. Our hallmark is parent education groups where you learn with parents and expert facilitators like myself every month in a small group setting where you're matched by criteria that matter most to you. And we talk about the ways your children are developing and important skills you can support, and then all of the triage around our daily struggles as being parents, of which there are just so many, and daily joys, which there are also enough to balance out all the really hard struggles, right? We also do amazing assemblies like this one with incredible partners and are so excited to have Benjamin Talks here today, which was so well named with Mariel Benjamin doing the Benjamin Talks. I really
we named it after you, obviously.
I felt like without even knowing me, it just had a lot to do with it. So I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Nikki, and I'm one of the co-founders of Benjamin Talks. I have 3 kiddos. I have an 8-year-old son, a 5-year-old daughter, and a 3-year-old daughter. There's 4 of us on kind of our core team. I'll let Krista tell you about her kids, but we have 12 kids, as you can see below, between the 4 of us. We always joke it's not cheaper by the dozen. And we started Benjamin Talks a little over 2 years ago. Do you want to give a little bit more of the...
So I'm Carissa Jordan. I have a 9-year-old son, a 7-year-old daughter, and a 5-year-old son. Nikki and I actually first met on the trading floors at Goldman Sachs during the Great Recession. And then fast forward a decade later, we're living in the same Long Island suburb, raising our young families. And we realized that we were both passionate about financial literacy. And we launched Benjamin Talks to really help families start taking the taboo out of money talk.
And really kind of targeting a young age. So you can have these conversations starting as early as 3, 4, 5 with some of our engagement techniques and topics, kind of ranging all the way up into the tweens. And of course, financial literacy is such an important topic at all ages. So it's kind of start early and do it often.
And all of our content is free. And we feel very strongly about that. We feel that everyone should have access to free financial literacy. So that is very much in line with our mission.
Oh, that's more about you. Sorry. I should have advanced more to read very, very quickly.
Oh, good. Yeah, no.
About everything that Nikki just said. Okay, perfect.
So just a little bit more about kind of what we do. Obviously, our overall mission is to educate and engage with parents, caregivers, and families on financial literacy, and all of that entails. We have our free financial content, which Carissa mentioned. We also have a patented product, which is our Benji Bank, which is here. It's our version of a piggy bank, and it's siloed into 3 containers, spend, save, give. We'll get a little bit more into that later and why we think it's important to separate there. And then of course we have investing later, but that's our product. And then we have a lot of impactful giving, which is a huge part of our mission. So, as with the silo with give, we didn't feel like we could really tell families to teach their kids how to give without having a corporate mandate to do so. So we have $5 from every Benji Bank that we sell goes directly to our nonprofit partner, Dream. They work with underrepresented urban youth to facilitate financial literacy education and investing. We also do a lot of work through corporations and through another nonprofit Gives to donate either our time or our Benji Banks as an educational tool for financial literacy.
Awesome.
Go to the next one.
This really just dives a little bit deeper into our mission. Again, we believe that conversations should happen early and often. The content we put out, we make sure that it's very digestible and not intimidating. We know that financial literacy for many and just the topic of money can seem quite intimidating. And we really try and take that intimidation away and really give parents the tips and tricks and tools that they need to make money talk part of everyday mini money moments.
And I would just add and kind of a core concept that we think about and that we were thinking about when we shape Benjamin Talks, just like you can't learn how to play soccer without a soccer ball or learn how to swim without water, you really can't teach young children about money without having them physically interact with it. And, in this day and age where, you're tapping your phone and things are arriving at your doorstep, or even as you get older, kids have their own DoorDash accounts and all these different things. It's even more important to have that physical connection from a young age so they can really understand the value or start to understand the value of money.
Agreed. We agree on so much. So that's why it's such a good talk. So in terms of today, we're going to talk about why it starts early, why parents don't talk about money, and then some of the financial fitness activities and things that we can start and begin today. So hopefully we leave everybody watching with a lot of very practical tips and tricks and things you can start right away. And then your kids are going to have a really fun evening as you talk about money, and don't try to get it all into one conversation. So as with all of our talks, this is a safe space. Feel free to share anything you're feeling in the chat or raise your hand, which I think is what the webinar allows us to do, which sounds very strange. But anyway, shout out, find a way to talk about it. And as you're watching or listening to this and you feel just guilty for whatever you haven't started and you have a 12-year-old and you've never discussed money with them, nothing is ever too late. If there's one thing the research tells us, it's always an opportunity to start again, right? And sometimes the repair on all the things we haven't done helps us to be more intentional and present in those moments. So as with every other time you do any parenting talk, I suggest you just welcome your anxiety because it's going to be there anyway, and forgive yourself for having it and just keep moving forward. I'm sure you ladies would say the same. You talk about money all day long. Nothing.
Yeah, we also we usually like to always put like a disclaimer out there, like have grace with yourself and with your children. Even though we are the financial literacy experts, there are some weeks that we even forget to give allowance, and it's okay. So you have to have grace.
All of COVID, I just want everyone to know, when I was not going to the bank regularly and money was not happening, I paid my children in paper clips. And so I really support anyone's lazy move around how you make it work, but a jar full of paper clips is still working, right?
I do Post-it notes and IOUs, so.
Yeah, that's right. There's always a way to do everything. So I think I'll just dive in. I know we're going to share and pass around, but I think one of the misconceptions around financial understanding is that your kids are going to learn it somewhere else, that schools are going to talk about it, or that first exercise in kindergarten where they learn that a penny stands for 1 and a dime stands for 10. And by the way, you guys have to check my math on everything that involves a number. But that's going to teach them financial understanding. And although there are a lot of core numerical concepts that kids start mastering from their first word often being more, right? I always tell parents, like, when you're starting with that idea of like, do you want 2 goldfish or do you want 10 goldfish? It's very obvious that your kids understand a lot of early numeracy. And in the research, early numeracy is actually a better predictor of literacy and numeracy than literacy is of both of them, right? So actually core symbolic representation and early math understanding is so essential for so many reasons. But the other thing is that we learn, like everything else, so many of our habits from our parents, and parents are modeling how they use money from the day they bring their babies home. So for you all to just start to accept that the unconscious messages you are sending around what you say about money, how you spend money, what your kids see around money are really important for that foundation. And sometimes we're bringing our discomfort and our history to that discussion. And because of that, we're either really hesitant to talk about it, or we tend to lean in and talk about it in a way that might be scary or overwhelming.
Yeah. And the research actually supports everything that you just said. So children understand value by the age of 3. And most children have formed some relationship with money by the age of 7. And much of that is predicated by what is modeled to them by their parents. And yet a vast majority of parents are still more likely to talk to their kids about sex, drugs, religion, and politics than they are about money. So there really is this opportunity for parents to engage with their children at a very young age and to have a positive impact. And they really have to kind of seize the, like we said, the mini money moments and kind of build on those as time goes on.
I lost my little guy. So I think, Nikki, as you were alluding to before, like it is a strange world around money that our children are inheriting. The smile Amazon box that arrives the second after you told your mom you wanted something, you know, is a fan favorite for the 8-year-olds, right? But the understanding of how money is spent has become so invisible for so many reasons. We're also, and I'll let you guys speak to this, but we're at a time of tremendous debt for young people where their spending habits have not shown that they had the type of financial literacy we wish they had had about things that they're taking on. I always say to families that, you know, if you want your child to make financial decisions of their own at 18 and your child, let's say, is 5, that's really not a lot of years to go from 0 to you want your child to be able to spend reliably or to take on something like a college loan, right? And so when you think backwards, most of us can start to accept that we do have to start much earlier than we think. I also think the research on social media and how that's affected our vertical wealth obsession. So a lot of that data is coming out that we used to compare ourselves to our friends and our neighbors, right, who tended to sort of have similar economic background as we did. Back to my whole thing where we all used to work in the same factory and live on the same block and things are one way. And now with social media, we tend to compare ourselves vertically to people who have a lot more than we do and how that messes with our sense of money and spending. And then for our kids, delayed gratification, even though the research shows that they are doing okay waiting, they don't have a lot of opportunity to practice. And one of the best ways that we at Cooper talk about learning delayed gratification and understanding is through financial literacy and thinking about saving. Do you guys want to add anything here?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all great points. We talk about delayed gratification a lot, especially as a fundamental building block to then, you know, kind of hone some of these bigger money skills later, budgeting, saving for bigger ticketed items. Again, all age can all be specifically age appropriate, but how that really kind of builds on itself so that later, like you said, you're making many money mistakes along the way and not missing a car payment or not being able to, you know, pay for a student loan, whatever that may be. So I think, you know, all of those are super important points. I think delayed gratification and then kind of building into, which we'll get into a little bit later, mindful spending, pause before purchasing, again, participating in the economy in a way that your parents kind of have to facilitate, especially from a young age, given all the things that are happening now, whether it's Apple Pay, Zelle, Amazon, same day, you know, all of those things, and really explaining to your child, even if you're out for coffee, I'm using my debit card, money from my bank account or our bank account is going to zip to the, you know, the restaurant's bank account, and kind of just taking one little extra step. It doesn't have to be a whole, you know, an entire dialogue that's super complicated, but just trying to explain those little things along the way can be great.
And with regard to delayed gratification, we think about it, and you mentioned this with saving, but we do it in an age appropriate way. So while we'd all love our 5-year-olds to start saving for college, it's not realistic and they cannot understand that frame of time, right? So a great way for them to use their save dollars would be to save for a bigger ticketed item that their weekly allowance could not have them afford, right? So maybe they're going to save for a skateboard or rollerblades, right? That's going to take them 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks to wait for. That's an age appropriate time frame to delay their gratification. But saying you're going to put this money away so you can go to your top college choice in 13 years, it doesn't really mean much to them, right? So it has to mean a lot to them in this moment.
I think what you're talking about is motivation, like anything else. Like they might be motivated for something. I do believe that my 8-year-old is saving for a car, and that motivation is carrying him through this long amount of time. But yes, I think when we get to that, like some ideas of what they can save for definitely saving for college is not one that's going to resonate with them for quite some time, even if it resonates with you. But that's your own
Right.
financial literacy, right? So
Mhm.
you got to get on that part. So I don't know if you ladies want to jump in about why parents traditionally don't want to talk about money.
Yeah, I think again, you've listed some out here. I think what we've noticed, and this kind of goes back to something Krista talked about before. If you look at the statistics, 2/3 of American adults can't pass a financial literacy test. 50% of parents are more likely to talk to their kids about sex than about money. A lot of this, and particularly what we have found since launching Benjamin Talks, can come from a few places. One, not feeling like you have the education yourself to talk about it. And so then it becomes kind of this big intimidating topic. So you don't have your own tools to kind of facilitate those conversations or your own education. The other is kind of, you don't want to have these conversations because you might fear that your child might become money obsessed. Again, really coming back to the whole education purpose is to empower your kids so they can make financial decisions. So they know if they want to be a baker or a botanist or whatever it may be, that they just understand everything that goes along with that, as opposed to being money obsessed. It's really just giving them the empowerment of the knowledge. I think those are two of the biggest things.
Yeah, I think
desire to preserve innocence is a
the thought that by not talking about it, kids won't become money obsessed is similar to saying kids are not going to have sex if we don't give them sexual education, right? So you have to think about it in a similar way. They are both equally taboo and should be addressed as like this is like a core concept that really needs to start at home. So even if you look at the legislature, only 23 states require high school students to take either a financial literacy course or an economics course, right? So it's only 23 states and at the high school level, right? But again, the studies show that children are already exposed to money and have a philosophy around money at the elementary level. So really waiting until high school to start these conversations is often, while we say it's never too late, it's a big opportunity is missed by waiting that long.
And we mistake our kids asking about things as obsession, right? And that I think that's that taboo, you don't talk about money, which maybe, people get from their parents or from their grandparents and generationally was a thing. But like with any of those other tricky topics you named that parents are more likely to, although in my practice, I would say they're also not likely to talk about those things either early enough. Like
right, just more likely, not
convincing
still,
parents
yeah.
how early they have to talk about porn, and that's really a challenge. But the idea that by our kids noticing or asking questions that that's somehow inappropriate sometimes prevents us from bringing things up, when actually it's them asking questions and them noticing and being obsessed that also allows us to understand and have some impact on their mindset. Because as you're mentioning, Carissa, once they have that, it's a lot harder for us to take apart those notions than it is for us to help them develop by listening to their questions all along the way.
And by the way, that doesn't mean that you have to answer all of their questions
Of course.
In the most, obvious way, right? So if your child asks you, Mom, how much money do you make? And they're 7 years old, what does it mean to them, right? What does that number actually mean to them? So how we like to approach those, kids ask the darndest things questions is like, let's put it in a way that they can understand. So we say, Mom makes enough money so that you could take ballet lessons. Mom makes enough money so that we have food on the table. And then we have this warm, cozy place to live, and that we're able to go to the movies once a month. So you have to put it in a way that they could relate. Or we make enough money so that we could give to causes near and dear to us. You don't have to tell them I make $100, right? That it's not really important for them to know that at this young age that we're talking about. And it really doesn't mean much to them. That number doesn't really mean much. They just want to know that they're secure. And if that there are any kind of money issues, like I grew up in a house where money was always an issue, that there's some sort of plan and safety net in place, right? So you want to just give your children the sense of security as best as you can.
I'll just add on the desire to preserve innocence. A lot of people, interestingly enough, the more well-educated and affluent you are, the more you desire your child to remain innocent and not talk about these issues. I think we have on here the statistic that if you do have concerns about money, you're more likely to talk about them with your family because it's front and center. In other situations, you're more likely to try to shield your children in this desire to preserve their innocence. But what we see, and I'm sure you guys can speak better to this than I can, but inherited wealth and how poorly children do about understanding money when it was never explicitly taught to them how to do it. So just having it isn't enough to say you don't need to learn about it because you have it, right? And sometimes that desire to that we call keep them innocent, right, protect them, shield them from money is yucky or dirty to talk about, actually prevents them from some of these skills. So works both ways. You don't have it and you talk about it, you have it, you don't. So in terms of the skills, we've talked through a lot of why we know that they need to start early. Things like impulse control. So that goes back to a little bit of that delayed gratification, the idea, I forgot how you phrased it, Nikki, with taking a pause before you spend, or thinking about being able to sit for a second and not make the first decision. And I think what's really beautiful about the spend money is that they also get to practice giving in to some of those impulses and buying a piece of candy or junk at CVS. I don't know why it's always CVS, but it's like the checkout line at CVS.
Right.
Buy in the junk, right? And they get a chance to have that. And then they also get a chance to work on impulse control. And obviously, been to any talk on parenting, like impulse control is where it's at for so many things, but including financial literacy. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, yeah, the pause before purchasing and allowing them to make these mini money mistakes, as we call them, that you just spoke to, is super important. I mean, my son learned that last
Are you
summer.
saying CVS is a mistake? Is that what you're saying?
Sometimes for me as an adult too. So, I think what we, like an example, my son last summer, everyone in their camp was obsessed with Pokemon cards. Every week he wanted to spend his spend dollars on Pokemon. And then he realized they're all just sitting there. And then he didn't have any extra spend dollars for an extra ice cream or a Gatorade out of the vending machine or whatever it may be. But he wouldn't have come to that conclusion if I just kept buying the same Pokemon cards over and over. So allowing them to make kind of these smaller money mistakes. Another thing that we suggest to help with delayed gratification, because of course, everyone's been there. Your child is having a meltdown at Target or in the line at the grocery store, whatever it may be. We try to say, let's take a picture of it. It's not in our plan today. Again, this kind of building into a later version of helping them make a budget, but it's not in our plan today. Let's take a picture. If we really want this, we can come back and next time we'll bring your spending dollars and you can make that purchase. But just doing little things like that and little tweaks to try to help. Again, we've all been there. The kids are melting down and, sometimes that's easier said than done. But if you can, it really does help build on some of these core topics, impulse control, et cetera.
And for families that have more than one child, something we like to point out is that every child is kind of born with their own money relationship, right? So like you have like the one who's like the innate spender, the innate saver, the one who wants to give it all away. That is actually part of like their core.
Their temperament.
What works for one child may not, and oftentimes does not work for the other. So my older two are very good about, mommy, can I have this? And if mommy says that is not part of the plan today, they say, okay. And they've been like this since they're younger. My 5-year-old will push back on me every chance he gets. And oftentimes I'm stuck with the, Russell, that's not part of the plan. So I started talking about the plan before the event. So we're going to the coffee shop. Today, the plan is to get one small treat, not a treat and a drink and a this and a that, right? So we talk about it before going in. I give him the opportunity to make a choice. You get to choose between any flavor macaroni you like. That's your choice, but that's the only part of the plan today. If you want to tap mommy's card, you can. So I'm giving him that sense of responsibility, and we talk about it. And he says, okay. And we go in and he has a meltdown, right? So then I'm stuck with, do I just give in because he's making me feel uncomfortable and embarrassing me and people are going to start judging me? Or do I use this to kind of stick to my guns? And I will say that 90% of the time I stick to my guns. And if that means, carrying him out as he's throwing a tantrum, it's more important that he learns from that than I don't feel embarrassed, right? So as parents, we have to realize that sometimes the children's behavior, particularly around spending and money, may make us not feel great, but it's better for us to feel a little uncomfortable and it to be a learning experience for the child.
Well, but that's a great example of them having a tantrum about anything that you set a limit around. So the forecasting that you're doing and walking into it and all of that, and that's great sounds like you're doing a great job handling those kinds of outbursts. I would say, just as a reminder for anyone on the science side, so the impulse control and our ability to regulate ourselves in general, we're always regulating across multiple, right? We're regulating our behavior, we're regulating our emotions, and we're regulating our attention. And that all lives in our prefrontal cortex. Those are our executive function skills. Those are our wizard skills, if you like the wizard lizard brain comparison, right? So the impulse is always going to come first, and then we're tapping into those wizard skills to think it through, planning, making a decision, waiting. That part of our brain is not fully developed until our 20s. So for your 5-year-old to have a lot of trouble, even after he made a plan and agreed to it, to doing it inside is so normal, is what we expect. It doesn't mean we stop doing it and stop calling on them to grow those muscles. It just also means we have to have a lot of understanding why they don't get it yet, right? And why, what you described before, why their temperament may not lend themselves to a kid who isn't impulsive, right? If any of us have those high reacting kids who feel all the feels in the moment that they feel it, they're different than the ones who are slow to warm up and cautious, who then might also be cautious with their spending, right? So it definitely works. Research on child development works across everything to help us understand it. I think sorry for the delayed slide situation. I think we've talked about the idea that what we're doing here today is trying to give people, parents, and then children, the knowledge and information they need to be able to empower themselves as they're making their future discoveries. Let's get into some of the ways that we can do it. So I know that you guys are going to go through the Benji Bank and how that sort of works. I feel like one thing I can add around allowance versus chores, which is like a very common misunderstanding that I think we're going to get into a little bit more. But the idea that allowance, as you said, is, I liked your analogy of you can't learn to swim without being in the water, and allowance is the way that you need money in order to learn how to spend it. For chores, we have a lot of important research that your responsibilities around the house, things you do to be a good citizen, things you do to contribute, are not the opportunities where you earn money, that we can put expectations on our children and should put expectations on our children for participation in lots of things. I have a lot of parents who pay for grades or pay for reading or pay for, going to dinner with the grandparent that you don't want to see. And there's a lot of confusion, I think, around what you can pay for and what you maybe don't want to pay for. So the way I always try to help parents understand, you guys will get into how you do allowance and what that looks like. But separately, if you want to pay your child for something, it's a job, right? And actually, kids are having less jobs over time than they used to and participating less as teenagers in job economy. But you can hire your children to do things for you around the house, to do tasks, and you can reward them with money. You can incentivize with money if that's a powerful incentive for your kid, as long as you set it up around something that doesn't need to be intrinsically motivated. So when we're trying to build our children's skills around something we just want them to be, like kind to their siblings, or work hard at school, or do the studying that is required of them, we don't generally want to pay for it, because that gives all the attention to do that to an external prize, not for the good of doing it. So my thing with parents to think about is like, is this just a behavior I need done one time, or is this just a behavior I need to see more often? Pay for it. If it's something about who you're going to be and who you are and your values, right, you're not going to pay for those things. And if it's something you just want them to contribute for the sake of contributing, we can do a different talk on how you get them to do chores, but it's not about money. So that was my 2 cents. Do you guys want to get into allowance now and how that works?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, kind of what you just laid out, ties into how we approach allowance and what we think allowance is best used for. And I think at its core, we think allowance is the best tool for teaching financial literacy, for a lot of different reasons. And we can get into the different ways that we kind of separate that spending, saving, giving dollars, how we think about them all differently. But from a very high level, it's giving children money for the sake of understanding how to learn and interact and spend or save money, and start to have that relationship with money. I think, kind of the bigger approach is that they're a good teammate in the house, then they can receive an allowance. It's not tied to a specific chore list, because as we know, as adults, I don't always get the dishes done every night before, we all get to bed, or you don't always fold that last load of laundry. And the same goes for a kid. So if they're generally a good teammate that week, then they're getting the allowance, but it's not specifically tied to a chore list. And then as they get older, or maybe this can even happen younger for some kids, they realize, well, I don't really care that much about the $2 for vacuuming. I don't want to do that. I'd rather, go outside and play, or, whatever it may be, that there's kind of that inflection point where they are starting to value that money separately than, just how they should be pitching in. So that's kind of from a top-down approach, how we think about allowance and being a good teammate, a good in the house, or a good citizen, as you called it.
And I love the research on giving. If you know that your parents give, if you're exposed to that, and if you participate, my kids love choosing where they're going to give their give jar to. But I think the idea that if you participate, your children are more likely, and that research is on not only giving of your money, but also giving of your time.
Right.
And I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So giving is a huge part of our mission and our brand. And what we like to tell parents is that you want to hone in on your child's passion and then point them in that direction for their giving. And while that may not align with what you want them to give to, they're going to be more likely to give and more excited to give if they're genuinely interested in this. So in my family, along with their giving dollars, which they'll use if there's a food drive at school, or a toy drive during the holidays, they also use their giving money around their birthdays. So in our family, birthdays are a big time of getting, as kind of a way to give. They use some of their giving dollars to give to a cause that they're passionate about. So my son, when he was younger, obsessed with animals. We have this book, and in this book it was all about endangered animals. And it mentioned March 16th is National or International Panda Awareness Day. And March 16th happens to be Kellen's birthday. So after reading that, he's like,
born panda lover.
So he's like, that's it. On my birthday, I'm giving my giving dollars to save the pandas. And I was like, amazing, great. So again, while it wasn't something that I would personally give to, I want him to feel excited. And like we said, well, like we call it the giving glow, get the giving glow to continue to give. And not only do we give and we encourage our kids to give their money, but we also encourage them to do acts of giving. So even sometimes we'll have them put IOUs in their giving silo of their Benji Bank to give their time. So it's really, really important to us. We also like to tell them what we're giving to and why we're giving to those organizations. We like to point that out. And we like to point out how giving dollars then get put to work by those organizations to further the cause. So it's really important concept for us.
And I would say, an example really quick on the giving glow, and just, again, this is all about empowering your child so that they're making these choices on their own as they get older and older. Schools always have the canned food drives or a toy drive. Go the extra step. Yes, they're using their giving dollars from their Benji Bank, but take them to the store, have them pick them out, then have them pack them in their backpack and take them to school. The kind of empowerment and joy and that giving glow that they get from that is a lot more impactful than just even having them have giving dollars in the first place and buying that, the canned goods yourself. Again, it takes a few extra steps, but not a huge, not a huge task.
Or go and deliver it in person. Like,
yes, that too.
We do a lot of local giving, and we go to the animal shelter and give them the check. I do convert their dollars to the check because I feel like the 14 crumpled dirty dollar hand over, it makes mom uncomfortable. So sometimes, I don't know what you guys think about this. Sometimes I do a match where we, their dad and I agree to do a match for anything that they're giving. We'll give to the same organization, but to deliver it in person, the delight on their face to hand a check to somebody is so important and meaningful that, like, if you can have that experience, like you said, it changes the idea of what you're contributing to, I think, really dramatically.
Definitely.
And another example of not giving dollars, but giving something, anytime you're going through your child's closet, have them do it along with you and say, okay, these clothes we're going to give to the local shelter, but maybe you want to pick a couple of your, outfits that have a sentimental value to you and give it to a younger friend. So my daughter loves going through her closet and she's like, I want to give this to Colette, who's Nikki's 5-year-old. And she feels empowered to give it to Colette. And then when she sees Colette wearing it, she gets super excited. And it's over, the first time you do it, the kids may feel a little, well, I don't want to give this up. This is mine. Why do I have to give it? But by the second and third and fourth time, they get really excited about doing it. And it's something that parents are doing anyway.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity to
It's
make
a
it a
great way to
learning.
teach trade-offs, right? Because they
Right.
really understand that. And I do with my kids, like, you have to clean out your closet or you can't get more birthday presents. Where would you put them, right? There's no
Right.
more room here. So there has to be stuff here that you would trade in order to get new ones, right? And if you're going to get new clothes or you've outgrown them all, what happens next? Also, one more tip is that I don't think a lot of parents know that if your kids do extracurricular activities, you can donate all of those skates and ballet slippers and outfits. And we do a lot of dance in my house. So whatever
Same.
those things are, to secondhand stores where other families can also buy them used. Because if you're not sure that your 5-year-old is going to play baseball forever, it's a big investment to buy everything, right? So it's another great way to have your kids see directly another child participate. Okay, on to the Benji Bank, I think is next, that you guys are going to talk through what you do.
Yeah, so we kind of think of all of the dollars that they're receiving from allowance or gifts or extra jobs. We think of these dollars in different ways, and we get our children to think of these dollars in different ways. So we think of spending dollars, we think of saving dollars and giving dollars. And then as they get a little bit older, 8, 9, 10, we start talking about investing dollars as well. From a very top line level, spending dollars are kind of those immediate dollars that they're using on a weekly basis, whether it be for something out of a vending machine or an ice cream cone, something smaller and that they're using more frequently. Saving dollars, again, age specific, but really the saving dollars here are not what you're thinking about for a savings account. You're thinking about for a larger ticketed item, again, or a goal that then you can move that to a savings account or an investing account. So kind of, longer term goal, like savings goals for the saving jar. And then in terms of giving, we kind of spoke a lot about that. Dollars that you're going to be using for school drives or something that you're passionate about. You guys both touched on this. One of the ways that we like to get or encourage kids to start giving is either through their passions or locally, because that's just their world and is very contextual for them.
And then with saving, we actually kind of think of, as the children get older, the saving jar is kind of like the investing jar is kind of like a tangent to the saving jar, right? So those saving dollars may move over to a savings account, and maybe some of them move over to an investment account, right? Because money loses value over time unless it's invested. And that's a way that you kind of tee up that idea of inflation in a way that's relatable. And we think about investing, again, we tell our children we're investing so that we have our money work for us, right? It's not a gamble. We're not taking a bet. We're investing in whether it's stocks or bonds or ETFs that we feel strongly about, that we feel will grow over time. And when we start talking about investing, we really tee those conversations up around 8. It's very child specific when they become more interested in it. And again, when we start talking about investing, we hone in on their passions again. So they're going to be more likely to be interested in talking about Nike or Disney or Starbucks, companies that they know and they're passionate about. And then you could tell them, well, you could actually be an owner in that. And here's how, and here's why. It piques their interest, and they're more likely to start caring.
Yeah. I love hearing about kids with their investing and like learning to read the ticker and like understanding what's going on. I think that's so awesome. But talk about a place where most parents are intimidated, right? And so an amazing opportunity to give your kids that value.
I think just like a last component on that, and just parent intimidation, what's been really interesting in the journey of Benjamin Talk so far is that we really feel like when you're learning something, and this is probably across a lot of the topics that you guys cover, when you're learning something under the premise or the guise that you're then trying to educate your children, it becomes less intimidating for you, even if you're learning it for the first time. And so it's really educating both your children, obviously, but yourself first. And I think that's, we could all use that. So
I love that, because you're right. You have permission to ask questions and to read beginner books on it, and to, I'm a big believer of like, let's look it up together, AKA I have no idea how.
Right.
I've just done a really big deep dive into windmills because my son was fascinated, and I was like, I can't answer any of these questions.
Right.
Like not one. So let's get the books and learn it together. So I appreciate that about investing. I think we covered this pretty well. Anybody
Yeah.
have other
I would
questions?
say the last thing about allowance, and this goes to the, the way we silo the bank too, that we didn't touch on yet, is that suggested allowance is really family specific, and how many siblings you have. My 5-year-old obviously sees my 8-year-old receive an allowance, so she wanted to participate sooner. What we do say though is that it should be divisible, because we want to start thinking about our dollars and the difference of spending, saving, and giving. So that's kind of really the only thing we didn't touch on yet in
And
terms of allowance.
I would also say set the expectations up front, right? So you tell your child, this is how much money you're going to get each week. Here's why. Here's what you're expected to pay for each week. And we kind of personally, we take a little bit more of the hands-off approach of like how much they silo into each bucket, as long as they're putting something into each bucket. But if you
say,
are
do you
family where you
require?
feel like, I'm sorry.
That was one of the questions. Do you require a minimum? I do as a parent, but I don't know if I say you have to put $1 in each of the 3, and then you can do whatever you want. But I don't know if that's how I'm supposed to do it.
No, you definitely can do that. I think what we say is we just make it divisible, and our only requirement, and this is just how the two of us do it, it's actually done differently within our team, is that you put something in each, and there's no percentage. There's not 20% of your allowance has to go to giving or whatever it may be. And a lot of families have different values on that. If your family is really involved in the church, maybe that giving expectation is larger on a weekly basis. And so it is very family specific.
And that's a great way to start introducing your values, your family values into the conversation by having that conversation up front and talking about the expectations.
So
Or setting parameters. For instance, my 8-year-old, now he's at an elementary school, and a lot of the older kids have a cell phone. So, but no matter how much he's putting in that saving silo, like he's not getting a cell phone at age 8. So having those conversations, are important as well, and setting what's completely off limits.
Yes. And I always tell my kids, and I think it's fair by those ages, to say anything that you would need permission to have still is something that you need permission to have. So having your own money doesn't mean that you can buy whatever you want from it. And they are well aware. By 8, he knows exactly what he needs permission to have. So
exactly.
it covers whatever he's up to. I'm just going to skip ahead because I know we're getting close on time, and I think we covered this too.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just jump into the things you can do starting today. And if you guys have specific sort of things, I think of this first one as also like the game of life. I think it's really important for kids to understand that people don't always choose work to make as much money as possible, but that sometimes the value of doing that job and a different lifestyle that it affords is what that person values, right? I don't think that's obvious to a lot of kids that, you could do something and not want to make $1 billion.
Yeah, I think, we actually had this conversation over the weekend. In my family, we went to an MLS game, and my son's like, well, he's very into Premier League, so he knows how much all the top players make. He's like, well, Mom, how much does the average MLS player make? And I was like, well, I don't know, but I'll look it up for you. And I told him, he's like, well, why would they do that for that amount of money? I'm like, well, because for them, just playing in front of thousands of people and being a professional soccer player means more than making, 5 times that doing something that they don't love and they're not passionate about. And it was an opportunity to, again, talk about money, talk about choices, in a way that's not really intimidating and based on something that they're already interested in.
Yeah. I think we touched on this a little bit, but future is a really hard concept for kids. And so you don't want to put something too far away, but it is good if you don't have other concepts for them around time to start thinking about that. So you might get a calendar and circle something like we're going to Disneyland, and then say we're saving so that you can buy that special toy that they only sell in the Star Wars land in Disney. I know this personally, right? You can tell. So when you're thinking about a goal, attaching it to the future or attaching it to time can actually help to teach your elementary school age child that concept, because they're so bad at it, right? And that even though that's normal, you can help that later concept by having those small rewards along the way. Address the why we spend money on things, I think is a really, as we said, a really important opportunity to talk about values. I always say, I don't recommend parents to say that's too expensive as a concept. A, because I think your children see you spend money on a whole lot of things that seem like they would be too expensive and you're fine to do it, right? So I will usually say to my kids, like, that's not a way I want to spend my money. Or, you know what? I don't think that's a good use of my money. And so I'm not going to get it, which attaches the value to it that it is for me. So if I do buy something expensive and I say, but you know what? This trip was really worth it to me because this was an incredible opportunity for us all to be together, and vacations are really good use of my money versus I'm going back to CVS with my example of, the bath bomb or whatever it is, right? I don't feel like it might have the same value.
That's so true. I mean, I think that general premise of addressing the why and tying it to the reasoning or the values of your specific family is something we touch on a lot across a lot of different topics. We do these tough money question series, and you can, in a lot of the ways that we address them, well, why is so-and-so's house bigger than ours? Well, we like to take a vacation every year as a family, and that's how we spend our money. And there's just ways that you can answer those questions, like you said, and framing it a little bit differently instead of saying, well, it's too expensive or XYZ, because again, your kids are all seeing it relative to their world and how you're making choices. So they might, like you said, they might see you spend on something else. And they're like, well, that wasn't more expensive than, the other. So
right. You can
that's a great
afford my
point.
bath bomb, Mom. I know
Right.
you can. I know it, you can. Okay,
So true.
that one we just covered. I love want and need lists. I don't know if you guys talk about this a lot, but I'm a big believer in on your refrigerator, not just on your phone, please, so that your kids can also see it. But I go around and take pictures of anything my kids tell me that they just want, right? Toys that they think of, things they want to do, whatever. And it all goes on their want list. Things that are going to appear in the Amazon box the next day are needs. And so I'll be very clear, like, they'll say none of our markers work and we need new markers, and I'll say, okay, that sounds like it's a need. Sometimes I have to check that actually the markers are not working, but okay, that sounds like a need. So they'll arrive the next day, and that's different, and that's something for the house versus like whatever, all the million things they want. The other thing, because I don't understand the future, connecting those two things back, is when I read my kids what they've put on their want list and we go through it for a birthday or a holiday or for the spend jar, right? Or the save jar that they want to finally buy something. It's amazing how they've moved on from so many things that they were desperate for. And that's that idea of future, right? Like that was instant gratification, and now they don't care about that at all. And you would have wasted your money had you indulged every time, right?
So true. Yeah. We talk about wants and needs a lot in that way. And we have some different games too. I know we don't need to get into them now, but you can check them out on our website. But we do a lot of kind of activities around that as well for particularly younger kids and getting them to understand those concepts.
Awesome. I know we're getting some questions. We'll zip through these. I think experiences of deprivation was that there's some really good research about our materialistic ways, and that doing things like going camping, going to sleepaway camp in a more rustic, right? Just reminding our kids that we're not as dependent on all of these wealth items all the time can do a really important reset for them, which, is hard to do when you're in your daily lives where all of us are rather spoiled. Do you guys want to say anything more about mindful spending, or do you feel like we covered most of it?
Yeah, I think again, mindful spending, we could think of it in many ways. So it could be pause before purchasing, making a list and sticking to a plan. It could also be choosing to purchase from smaller companies or mom and pop shops, or shopping local, or supporting mission-driven companies. So that is also included in kind of mindful spending. And again, it's another way for families to interject their values in the conversation.
Yeah, I'm just pulling all our tips up so we can make sure we get to all of them. I think we did trade-offs. We definitely talked about giving. I always say the opposite of being spoiled is not having nothing, right? You can have very little and still take it for granted. And so when you're thinking of what you can do to build an appreciation for the things that you do have, that's gratitude. So check out Cooper. We can give you a million other ways to have a gratitude practice, but it's a good balance to all the other things that you're doing to think about making sure that your kids do build an appreciation for all they have. And bring your kids to stores, which I think we've covered, but they can't learn how far You can spend $30 on that gift goes unless they pick up every toy in the store, bring it to you, and you say, really, that says 75. Go back, find another.
And then
one.
you have to talk about tax after that, but.
Yeah.
And then you have to talk about tax. I always, when my kids were little, I was like, no, what the tax, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, now I have to talk about tax. Okay, let's get to questions. I'm going to stop sharing so at least we can see each other. Okay, my kids ask a lot of questions and make a lot of observations about other people's homes. Oh, right, to your point. And they do it when we're there. Oh, our house is so much bigger. Or why is their house so small? Their house is so big, no fair. How do you guys like to start answering that?
Yeah, I think it's tricky, right? I think you could say like, why don't we talk about this when we get home? Or you could put it in a way of like, you really shouldn't, like, you wouldn't point out, you wouldn't ask a question about your friend's appearance in front of them. So you really shouldn't ask a question about your friend's possessions in front of them. And it's okay to have those questions, but these are family questions that we could discuss at home.
Yeah. And I think like kids do say embarrassing things without any context or any depth. I think sometimes we give them way too much credit for having thought or trying to be mean, or they're just making observations and about all of these topics that give us angst. They don't have any angst about them. They're just like a pure question. So
Right.
in the moment, I think it's totally fine to say, okay, you know what, and move on to the next topic and apologize if it's something really offensive, and you can model that, but not to be angry at your kids for saying
Yeah,
those
right.
things, and to understand where it comes from, and
Yeah.
saying like, people live in all different types of houses. Some are going to be bigger than yours. Some are going to be smaller than yours. Some are going to look really different than yours. And that's just part of going to people's houses and looking. And we can talk about all the things you notice when we come home.
Right. I think that goes to your point earlier too, about how kids, the questions might be coming from a different place. And a lot of times it's out of curiosity and they don't have that kind of other context. I think, we do a whole series of, tips on how to answer these types of questions, or tough money questions, or uncomfortable questions that kids ask a lot just out of curiosity, not even because they are upset that so-and-so's house is bigger. And you can frame, just to give you a little bit more concrete answer there, you can frame that and, well, every family has different values and different reasons for spending money on things. Maybe they wanted a bigger house. We like to play, you get to do 3 activities, or for our family, that's more important. And you can really, again, interject your family's values and how you make decisions, or use it as a chance to talk about professions if the kids are older, and different job careers and how that ties to money. Because that is something that we think you should get into as they get older, so that they understand.
I also think I have very inquisitive children. So I like to preempt some of these questions. So if I know that we're going to a neighborhood that looks different than ours, or a house that looks different than ours, or just a family that has different values than we do, I preempt it in a way like, oh, Sally has a lot of extended family, so she gets a lot of toys for her birthday. So she may have the latest Barbie doll, and just have that like a little bit ahead of time. Or we're going into the city where people live in buildings and their apartment may seem smaller than a house in the suburbs, and that's normal for them. So I kind of like to preempt things. I don't like to go in blind, because I do find that they do say these things. And also it's like understanding their world. So if in their world, everyone plays, X sport, and they go to a different world, well, why is Sam not playing that sport? They're not doing it or saying it to be mean. It's just very different than their world. So think about their world, and when putting them in different situations, what kind of questions that may lead to.
Yeah. And again, it's really our discomfort. It's always about our discomfort,
Yeah.
and not about our kids. I want to share one anecdote in case it makes anyone feel better about how confused kids can be about why they're asking. I have a client who, 7-year-old boy came to his mom and said, I really want you to get divorced. And she was so upset. And she called me and she's like, I don't know why he would say this. This is so crazy. I have no idea. And I said, well, have you asked him why? So she went back and she said, you know what? The other day you said you wanted me to get divorced. Why was that? And he said, because my friend's parents got divorced and his dad lives in a building with a pool now. And she's like, oh, so you wanted to live in a building with a pool? it actually had nothing. He had associated those two things together. And she's hearing that as like, he must be talking about my relationship with his
Right.
father and all these other things. And it really was just like, I want to tell you, I want to have a pool and I'm going to do it in this way. So there are so many times where our kids ask questions where we can take a second to say, what are you noticing? What are you thinking? What are you observing? Before we just jump into what we decide is that answer. And I'm excited to check out your tricky money topic questions, but I always think asking back, tell me what you're thinking about, or tell me what you're noticing, or what do you think, gets you so much more information about what they're actually asking than just assuming that they're, being jerks or asking something really offensive. How do you guys handle holidays and the abundance of gifts and the wants? The behavior is always so much worse during the holidays. The kids seem so ungrateful. Any advice?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have a lot of, and this is a family thing. This is not a Benjamin Talks thing. This is like a family thing. We have a lot of rules and expectations around holidays, where when my children sit down and write their Christmas lists, they're really only allowed to ask for like 3 things from Santa. And then they could write down 2 things that they want from their grandparents. And they could write down like 2 things that they want from mom and dad. And they're really limited in that. And they know like, well, Santa may add things on, and that may be because you're being, well behaved, or, just for fun. And it's typically smaller things, books and craft supplies and things like that. But I really limit their asks. And again, this is a family thing,
Yeah.
not a Benjamin Talks thing.
Yeah, I definitely have a different approach there, but I think what we align on and what in Benjamin Talks is that to make the holidays or and birthdays in a way of incorporating the giving, not just about getting, but about giving, and being very intentional with that, and making lists for whether you're shopping for siblings or grandparents, and using your spending dollars for that, or your saved, your dollars that you've saved up. I think also it doesn't have to be tied to money from your bank. You can also make something to go along with it. So just trying to frame the holidays or even your birthday, it's not just about the getting aspect. I mean, I'm sure you can speak to the behavior part of it, because I know we've all experienced that. But
and I think it's another thing that we like to do, and we've written about this, prepare your children for the holidays. So if Aunt Susie always gives a handmade knitted sweater, let's address that before we open up the gifts. So, Aunt Susie spends a lot of time making that sweater, and she's really proud of that sweater, and that's what she wants to give you for the holidays. So when they open that sweater, they're not showing disappointment. The expectations are kind of set. So again, setting the expectations, letting them, but then also giving them autonomy. So having them buy presents for their siblings or a best friend, and have them choose the organizations you're going to give to, really, I think, empowers them during the holidays. And again, just managing our own expectations on their behavior.
right.
Definitely. I think their behavior on times of stress is known to be terrible. So it wouldn't have to do with how many presents they get or how many presents they don't get. And if you've ever tried to not give them presents, the tantrums are just as bad as giving them presents, but more managing your expectations. And I think reframing the purpose of the holiday for them. And again, seeing how important gifts are, and depending on their interests, because we can't help that some of them are more motivated by gifts, thinking about how you deal with their behavior around it and what you ask of them, and depending on the age. And when they're really little, hiding 50% of the gifts that they receive in your closet, because they don't know the difference, right? And giving them out over time. My daughter has a November birthday. I think we went like 5 years where the November birthday, half the presents reappeared for Christmas and Hanukkah, because it was like I would just hold half of them. She didn't know how many there were.
That's so true. I mean, I think just other personal anecdotes that we do, I also let the kids choose an experience as opposed to physical gifts. So an experience, and this is around the holidays, with myself or with my husband, or something they want to do with a sibling. So again, that it's not just about the material part of it, and trying to, widen the scope of what the holidays mean to you and your family is a good way to help with some of the abundance of gifts issues, because they're coming from grandma and grandpa regardless.
Yeah.
So trying to incorporate some other things there can help.
We do that actually for birthdays. That's why we were at the MLS game this weekend.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
I was gonna say that's
part
why
of
I'm
my-
going to Disney this weekend. That's what you're doing for your 9th birthday, and that is the whole experience for your
Yeah.
family to go.
And
come
as
back.
children
By
get
the way, I
older,
will say I live 45 minutes from Disney, so for me it's a day trip. It's not. That would sound
Yeah.
like I'm going on a vacation, but yes.
yeah, I think as they get older, they actually appreciate that more, and I guess like they're thoughtful about like, is it just with mom and dad, is it with my siblings? How
Yeah.
is everyone going to feel about it? Is everyone going to enjoy it? So I think including an experience it's really impactful.
And it shows that value, like money you spend on something that you remember forever versus a toy you outgrew. Yeah. You guys don't have old enough children yet for escape rooms, but I highly recommend them as experiences. We did that for this holiday past with all our cousins, and it was like the best time ever, and nobody got presents. So it was awesome.
Yeah.
So fun.
Thank you so much for being here. This was really exciting. If people want more information, we'll send a handout to everybody who RSVP'd, or it will be linked below this online. Thank you, ladies. This was so fun. It was great to meet you.
Thanks so
Thank
much for
you.
having us.
Take care.
All
Bye.
right, bye, guys.
Bye.
Enjoy Disney.
Thank you. I'll try to survive it.
Bye.